What is up, Pitt fans? Thank you so much for turning to Inside the Panthers on YouTube. My name is Steven Thompson, coming to you from the south side of Pittsburgh following Pitt training camp practice number 18. I want to thank you all for tuning into another Inside Pitt practice report because this is our last week of training camp reports. I do plan to keep these going through the season, at least once or twice a week. We are there every day. At the very least, have some game reports for you following away games and maybe live from Acrisure Stadium as well. We'll see as the season goes on, but please stay tuned to this channel. We're going to keep this up going through the season. I've really enjoyed doing these breakdowns of practice and giving you a little insight into the facility. And with that said, let's break down a little bit of what we heard from Pitt practice today. It was another big day at the UPMC Rooney Sports Complex. We did not get media access on Monday, so today was our first day to ask about this weekend scrimmage. And if you remember our last video, it was a big one. The second scrimmage of training camp. It was a scrimmage that Pitt coaches and players told us was really going to decide a lot. And Pat Narduzzi reiterated that today as well, saying that he has a pretty good idea now of what the starting lineup is going to look like. Guys who are going to be starters have begun to separate themselves. Guys who maybe have fallen out of some races, he knows that as well. He didn't share many specifics. I think he wanted to keep the details of personnel pretty tight, but that idea does exist within the coaching staff, and they're nearing putting together a full depth chart, which will probably come out next week, early next week, as they begin their prep for Wofford, the season opener on September 2nd. I can tell you, as far as personnel goes, that people change numbers this weekend. And Pat Narduzzi said that was pointed. There was a purpose. It's not just personal preference. They want to make sure that they are organized on special teams. So, when you think about a guy like Kenny Johnson, who went from number 35 to number 2, that's to maybe keep him out of the way of a defensive player wearing number 35. And I think that's maybe a hint that Kenny Johnson won't be on a whole lot of kick coverage or punt coverage. He'll be, if anything, on special teams doing some of the returning. But he's a guy that you can kind of draw a line from the idea that, he's played really well in camp. Now he's changing his number to something that's a little more distinct. He now shares it with David Green, and they will likely not be on a ton of special teams plays together. And that goes for up and down the lineup. Some of the notable ones: DeAndre Jules from 90 to 0. That's a big change as well. Dejon Reynolds, 81 to 3. PJ O'Brien, 22 to 5. Nate Temple, 16 to 6. Malcolm Epps is number 7. Javon McIntyre goes from 20 to 7. Rylan Gandy, guy we talked about being that fourth corner, perhaps, from 18 to 10. Zion Fowler L from 23 to 12. Tamarian Crumpley, another outstanding young corner, from 24 to 15. Montrevious Lloyd, 28 to 15. Israel Polk, 27 to 18. There are some others. Stephon Hall, that's another one I should mention. That's a guy who I think could play a little bit this season. He's a guy who's making plays all over the field. He is now our takeaway sticker leader with 6, by the way, which is ridiculous. That guy literally has half of his helmet covered in takeaway stickers. But he goes from 37 to 25. So those are some guys that you got to watch out for. Just some new numbers, but those are guys who are also maybe had more than personal preference just behind their number change. It's to get guys organized. It's maybe a look into who will be playing special teams and who won't if you run down the roster. But we can talk about that scrimmage a little more specifically now. Pat Narduzzi said the defense won the second scrimmage and perhaps played a little bit more inspired ball. The Panthers offense has been dominating, it seems like, at least from all reports. It dominated the first scrimmage, and it's been kind of getting the better of the defense throughout practices this year. The deep ball has been a big thing that we talked about. Phil Jerkovic, the emergence of the 4 freshman wide receivers, the improvements of the tight ends, the continuity that you have on the offensive line, all that combined to make for what seems like a pretty good training camp from the offense. But the defense maybe played some inspired ball. We heard from Cruz Brookins, freshman safety, Kyle Lewis, a redshirt freshman linebacker guy who's really been a standout during camp, that the defense played angry. And we heard that from Pat Narduzzi too, that they played with intensity. They played like they were mad that they lost the first scrimmage. So they really wanted to get one back on the offense, and it sounds like they did. And they did it by forcing turnovers. Pat Narduzzi said MJ Devonshire was one of the main guys who's been doing that all during camp, especially during this scrimmage as well. I can read you this quote from him. If you're anywhere near him, Let's start it back a little bit. If I was an offense, I would not throw 12's way. If you get anywhere near him, he's like a receiver right now. He's a lot of confidence right now in what he's doing. This is a guy who was in contention for all ACC. He was an all ACC selection as a corner last year, and it sounds like he's only getting better. I'll tell you, even going to the combine, talking to the guys who were preparing for the NFL combine from Pitt, we asked him, who is the next Pitt guy who's going to be here? And a lot of them said MJ Devonshire. They have a lot of faith in this guy, not just to have a strong season this year, but to be a really great pro prospect too. And it sounds like MJ has kind of lived up to the hype as well. So I think that's the biggest takeaway is this defense playing with some pride, forcing some turnovers. Narduzzi also mentioned that they were strong against the run, which the offense was really trying to establish. And that's kind of to be expected. Pitt is traditionally very good against the run. They are, they, and if the offense is just trying to run it down their throat, that's not a very advantageous situation for the offense. If the defense can see it coming and they're good against it, that's a recipe for disaster a little bit. And that sounds like that's kind of how the scrimmage went. So defense gets one back. I do not think they will do another Jersey scrimmage. They will just kind of roll right into game week with Wofford after camp breaks on Friday, like I said. Another thing is that there is one season-ending injury that Pat Narduzzi did decline to share the identity of with or the severity of or who it happened to. But he did mention that there is one season-ending injury out there for the Panthers. We're not allowed to report on it. There are some ideas out there. There are some ideas that we can maybe gather from practice, but we'll wait for Pat Narduzzi to share that news officially. But something to be on the lookout for. And I think the kind of last note that I have from what head coach Pat Narduzzi said to us this morning was that Phil has been impressive. He's completed 72%. That is an exact number of his passes in 11-on-11 drills during training camp, and that's one of the biggest things you're looking for from Phil. Accuracy, being on time, knowing the offense, having command of the offense, and then, if the stuff we're hearing about the deep balls is true, him completing all those passes while taking those shots is even more impressive as well. So that's good to hear. And then further down the depth chart, Pat Narduzzi, again, not getting into the specifics of competitions and the results of scrimmages, but he did say with those turnovers that the defense were forcing, there did emerge some separation in the quarterback two battle. We're not exactly sure who took the lead between Christian Veillere and Nate Yarnell. We know it's between them, but we'll have to wait and see who kind of emerges when the dust is settled on practices later this week. And I want to kind of finish off this video by talking about a feel-good story. Nick Lappy was put on Nick Lappy, was put on scholarship this weekend. It was a really nice moment where David Green was recognizing him for his work on the scout team last year, and then how he elevated himself into a really important special teams role this year. And when Green was talking about it, he was also mentioning Brandon George as well, and he said, oh, these are two scholarship guys who are doing really big things and moving up the depth chart because they're working hard. And George is on scholarship, but Lappy was not. And he pointed that out. And then David Green said, oh, right, then maybe we should put you on scholarship. And the room erupts. All his teammates are really happy for him. Nick goes to call his mom, said she was swearing and couldn't stop smiling. She was so happy for him. But this is just a guy who worked really hard by all accounts. Seems like he could really be a contributor this year, at least on special teams, if not as a reserve linebacker as well. This is a guy that Pat Narduzzi talked up during camp last year. He came in as a walk-on, obviously, last year, and then slowly worked his way up, through the rocks, and then played a lot of special teams last year. He did get a little bit of burn in the West Virginia game. I do remember very vividly he was one of the guys who was on the field during that last drive for West Virginia when the Panthers stopped them and won the game. It was an interesting rotation out there. I remember it was Lappy, and I think Rashad Battle might have been out there too, maybe Javon McIntyre as well. It just felt like there was a really odd group of players out there on, I think, the very last play, that ball that fell short right at the end zone. So, Lappy clearly not afraid of the moment, clearly contributed to a big moment, and then had some other great moments throughout the rest of the year. So good for Nick Lappy. We're excited to hear that news. And that's how we'll kind of conclude this practice report for now. We'll be back tomorrow with another one live from the South Side. We got two more practices to to watch before the kickoff luncheon, and then we get into game weeks. So thank you all again for tuning into another Inside Pitt Practice Report. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube. That's youtube.com/Inside the Panthers, and find all of our reporting from training camp at InsideThePanthers.com. I'm Stephen Thompson. Thanks for tuning into another episode. I'll see you next time.